Greetings, friends! If you, like me, devour stories about what-ifs in the world of aviation, if your heart skips a beat at the sight of forgotten blueprints and unrealized projects, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into one of the strangest and most instructive chapters in the history of the Luftwaffe. This is not a tale of triumph, but of the illusion of a simple solution. The story of an aircraft that was meant to become a fearsome weapon but turned into a visual aid for engineers. Don't switch away, it's going to get intense. And make sure to read to the end. I'm waiting for your comments and verdict there. And to not miss such detailed breakdowns, hit subscribe, and the bell. Our channel grows only thanks to you. So, picture this: Europe, the late 30s to early 40s. The air is practically saturated with gunpowder and aviation fuel. Hitler's Germany, intoxicated by the blitzkriegs in Poland and France, is already making plans against England and looking eastward. Their aerial fist is the famous Messerschmitt Bf 109, specifically the Emil modification Bf 109E. A fast, agile, fearsome machine. But the Luftwaffe command is already getting nervous. Intelligence and logic suggest the adversaries are not sleeping. Over the English Channel, the silhouettes of Spitfires are already looming, which are in no way inferior to the Messer, and in some ways even superior. What if, in a year, new, even more advanced aircraft appear? And here a tempting, seemingly logical idea emerges. We have a proven, Swiss watch reliable platform, the Bf 109 airframe. Millions of parts, established production, trained pilots, repair workshops. We change the guts and get a new machine with minimal cost and in record time. It sounds like the dream of any minister of armaments in a total war. Why reinvent the wheel when you can just put a jet engine on a bicycle? That's roughly how they reasoned at the Reich Ministry of Aviation (RLM). And their gaze fell on a new, just-emerged engine, the mighty BMW 801. To understand the scale of the endeavor, let's delve into the technical side for a second. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 is, you could say, an icon, a model of German engineering. But this icon had its own, very specific soul. Its heart was the liquid-cooled inline engine, the Daimler-Benz DB601. Long, relatively narrow, like a sports car engine. The entire fuselage of the 109 was honed for this shape, sleek, streamlined, aerodynamically clean. This gave it speed and elegance in the air. Now imagine you take this sleek fuselage and try to stuff a radial, air-cooled BMW 801 engine into its nose. It's like putting a St. Bernard's harness on a greyhound. It looks like the same animal, but the essence is completely different. So why choose the radial engine? There was its own iron logic, rooted in economics and tactics. War is not just about speed, it's about survivability and resources. A radial, air-cooled engine is essentially a massive metal drum of cylinders. In a head-on attack, this drum served the pilot as additional armor. A hit from a shell fragment or bullet often didn't completely disable it could keep running on damaged cylinders. But the finicky V-shaped liquid-cooled engine, with its radiators and pipelines, was as vulnerable as a glass vase. One accurate hit to the cooling system, and the pilot had only his parachute left. Moreover, the radial was simpler and cheaper to produce. Less complex mechanics, fewer scarce materials. In conditions where the war promised to be protracted and a war of attrition, this argument was one of the decisive ones. And so, under pressure from RLM officials who wanted a backup in case another promising project, the Focke-Wulf FW 190, failed, Messerschmitt's team took on the job. Thus was born the project that later received the unofficial name Bf 10910. X like an unknown variable, a riddle. And this riddle had a catch from the very beginning. Work was in full swing. In the autumn of 1940, a prototype, converted from a serial Bf 109F, took to the air for the first time. And it almost immediately became clear that a simple solution did not exist. Yes, the numbers on paper looked impressive. Nominal power of 1,600 horsepower, takeoff power of full 1,750. Estimated maximum speed about 615 kilometers per hour. But paper, as we know, endures everything. Reality, however, was much harsher. Imagine yourself in the place of the test pilot. You climb into the cockpit, and the first thing you notice is the tightness. The fuselage of the Messerschmitt, never known for its spaciousness, was now swollen like a cheek to accommodate the wide engine. The cockpit became like a sweet box. You start the engine. The roar is mighty, your heart rejoices. But then you begin your takeoff run. And here, an old but now exacerbated ailment of all BF-109s manifests itself: the narrow landing gear track. Imagine, a heavy, powerful engine pulls the nose forward, the center of gravity is shifted. The machine tilts, it wants to spin around its axis like a capricious horse. Pilots later complained that takeoffs and landings in this hybrid turned into a circus act with mortal risk. But now you're in the air. Controllability. Acceptable. But what's this? You push the throttle to add power for a maneuver, and the engine thinks. For a second, too. It doesn't respond immediately to the command. In combat, where decisions are made in fractions of a second, such a delay is death. And also the heat. The temperature in the cockpit rises to unbearable levels. The pilot is literally roasting like in an oven. And the most anecdotal yet catastrophic point: the oil consumption. In the first flights, this humpbacked messer, as it was nicknamed for its clumsy nose, consumed up to 30 liters of oil per hour. It didn't fly, it evaporated it. Imagine the logistician who has to supply such a machine on the front lines. It's a nightmare. For a year, Messerschmitt's engineers wrestled with these problems. By the summer of 1941, they had achieved some things. They managed to reduce oil consumption to a relatively acceptable 3.6 liters per hour. But the fundamental problems, the delayed throttle response, overheating, instability, remained. Every fix spawned new complications. The aircraft became a set of engineering compromises, each of which robbed it of part of the soul of a real messer. Meanwhile, the world around it was changing rapidly. While they were struggling with the X in the hangars, its main competitor, the purpose-built Focke-Wulf FW-190, not only took off but triumphantly burst into the skies of the Western Front. In the summer of '41, British pilots reported in horror about a new German fighter unlike the Messer, more survivable, powerful, and maneuverable. The FW-190 was born for a radial engine from the start. It had no compromises, its airframe and aerodynamics were created in harmony with its heart. It was a holistic, terrifying, and effective weapon. It was even nicknamed the Spitfire Killer. And at the same moment, the classic BF-109 line proved it hadn't said its last word. Modifications appeared with more powerful DB601 and, later, DB605 engines. They retained all the advantages of the original concept: speed, rate of climb, familiarity for pilots. They were easy to upgrade in existing factories. And then came the moment of truth. The strategists at our LM looked at three things: the ready, ultra-successful FW-190, the successfully evolving classic BF-109, the problematic, finicky, dangerous hybrid BF-109X. The choice was obvious. Project X was quietly and without fanfare closed down, due to irrelevance. So what was this story? It's a classic trap that military personnel and engineers around the world have fallen into and continue to fall into. The illusion of a cheap upgrade. An attempt to jump higher without changing the body. The BF-109X is a monument to the fact that you cannot endlessly squeeze new capabilities out of an old platform if they require changing its very essence. The Messerschmitt was the perfect machine for its inline engine. Converting it for a radial killed all its best qualities without giving anything in return except headaches. The Germans learned this lesson brilliantly. They did not scatter precious wartime resources on finishing the ugly duckling. They made a strategically correct move. They allowed Willy Messerschmitt to continue honing his magnificent, albeit aging, streak, the BF-109. And they gave Kurt Tank full freedom to develop his revolutionary chunk, the FW-190. This division of labor, this competition of ideas, led to the Luftwaffe having, until the mid-war period, without exaggeration, two of the best fighters in the world, each a king in its own element. So, friends, the story of the BF-109X is not the story of a failed aircraft. It's the story of a correct, albeit tough, managerial decision. A story about how sometimes you need to have the courage to stop in time, say this is a dead end, and throw your strength into what really works. In a world where every mark, every penny, and every man-hour had to be counted, such rationality saved the lives of thousands of German pilots and perhaps prolonged the war. What do you think? Did the fat messer have any chance at all? Maybe if they had given it more time and resources? Or was it a stillborn project from the start? Write your thoughts in the comments, let's argue, discuss. Your opinion is very important to me. And if this deep dive into aviation history hooked you, If you want us to continue analyzing such alternative pages of technical history, put a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. Many more untold stories await us.